Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I know that this weekend and all of the things that have come to light, I'm sure, are creating some thoughts and feelings and emotions. And to be perfectly transparent, I had to revamp and rework kind of everything I wanted to do this week, just to make sure that I am being conscious and aware of where you currently are. I felt like it would be it would be unfair of me to expect business as usual, as I'm sure some of you are recognizing in your world that is just not an option right now. So before we get started, before we do anything, I thought that maybe it might be nice to just take a moment to breathe. I'm going to lead you through just a really mini kind of meditation this morning, just to help center and anchor and kind of create some calm internally before we get started on this module. So if you could just take a moment, we're going to gently close our eyes. And as you close your eyes and you sit up nice and straight, almost as if there is a string pulling your top of your head towards the ceiling, creating that elongation in our spine, just start to breathe with deep, long inhales going in through your nose, and then equally long exhales coming out of your nose. And as you start to settle into this breath, become aware of where you are feeling the air the most. Are you feeling the air as it enters into your nostrils? Are you feeling it as it's moving down your throat? Is it filling up your lungs? Or do you feel it the greatest as it's filling up your belly, almost like a balloon? So wherever that space is that you're feeling this breath the most, I want you to draw your attention specifically on that area. We're going to call this your anchor spot. So sometimes in moments of chaos, when we really are searching for calm, having a space or a place that is an anchor is a way to ground us and to bring us back into the present. So if you've identified your throat or your lungs, focus all of your attention for the rest of this time on that specific area. So as you continue to breathe in, notice how that feels in your anchor spot. And as you exhale, pay attention to that feeling as well. We're just going to take 2 more deep breaths here, really filling up, focusing on our anchor, and then exhaling and letting it go. And 1 more deep breath in, this time exhaling through your mouth. When you're ready, just opening your eyes, bringing back your attention and your focus. So I hope you were in a space or a place while you were watching this that allowed you to do that nice kind of calming breath. I find that in times like these where there's a lot of unknown and a lot of things that are out of my control, my internal environment becomes such a safe space for me. And as long as I can keep that calm, I'm able to kind of stay on course. So for this week, the topic for week 6 was supposed to be connection and contribution, which I thought it was ironic that it's connection because we are in social isolation. So, but then I started to rethink about what connection can mean. And although I originally had wanted you to, go out in person, connect with somebody you haven't seen for a while, and we're going to talk about what that looks like, I'm reworking it so that we're going to still do connection, but it's going to be in a different format. So if you're looking at the module for this week, you'll see the overview video, which you're watching right now. And then the second piece is an article from this author. Her name is Gretchen Rubin. I actually read 2 of her books. One of them is called The Happiness Project, and one of them is called Outer Order, Inner Calm. And she wrote this article that I actually saw. I subscribed to her email list, so it came in through my email, and it was called 10 Tips to Calm Our Inner World during this time. So it's all in response to some of the anxieties and emotions that are coming up in regards to the coronavirus. And she gives these 10 practical tips on things that you can do to create kind of calm and centeredness this week. So the first assignment is for you to go back to the basics. This is a stress management course, and already it's week 6. We have developed and established some really specific tools for you to use. So I want you to go back to that. During times of chaos and uncertainty, we tend to let our routines go out the window. So I really want you to focus on those morning routines, those things that you've set up for yourself, including some meditation or breath work or quiet or solitude. It's going to be really important important these next couple of weeks to have that quiet time for yourself. I suggest doing it in the morning because for me, I can wake up a little bit earlier than my kiddos, and it's the only time during the day that I really have quiet to myself. But it could be any time throughout the day where you just can disconnect for a moment and get in touch with that anchor and that breath. The nighttime routine, making sure you're not, blowing that out the window because you're not going to school in the mornings super early. So our morning routines and our nighttime routines, they kind of get mixed up where we're staying up extra late and then we're sleeping in and we just kind of get off kilter, and that can actually add stress to our lives. So when you can keep as much of a routine as possible, it's going to be really helpful. So try to, kind of touch back to that. I know that last week was movement. I know that some of you had reflected that you didn't really get a chance to move much just because of everything that was going on. So in the resources, I've also listed some apps, a lot of, like gyms and, Beachbody and some of these like really big fitness industry people are offering free online subscriptions and classes right now for the next couple of weeks. So if you didn't get a chance to do movement again is going to be really important. I suggest going outside if you possibly can. I went for a huge hike with my family on Saturday, and just being out in the fresh air and breathing in, nature and just absorbing that calm was so helpful. So that type of movement is amazing too, but there's a lot of indoor apps and stuff that you can use. I mentioned Down Dog before. They're offering free subscriptions for the month. So I've linked those in the resources for you to kind of look at. So that first thing, the article, you're going to implement one of those tips. Some of them are things that we've already talked about, even like keep moving, connection with family, continue routines. So all those things I just mentioned, you're going to pick one and you're going to just reflect on why you chose that and how that made you feel. The second thing on here is actually called a Spark type survey. So a few years ago, when we talk about contribution and we were in the process of kind of discovering or doing some work around purpose, one of the purpose pieces seems to apply most to the job and the work and the career that we do. So this Sparketype survey is something that you take that will give you almost a profile of ways that you feel most alive when you're doing specific things. So for example, when I took the survey, and this will make sense to you in a minute, or when you take it, I was a sage, which essentially means that I love learning and absorbing and reading and getting information and using things to kind of spark that own internal flame for me. But what really lights my soul on fire is then taking that information and then teaching it to other people. So through that process, I was able to recognize, am I in alignment to that spark type? Is this something that I get to implement on a daily basis? And if not, how can I bring more of this into my world and into my life? So I'm going to have you take that. And for the reflection piece, I just want you to talk about, where has this spark type shown up for you in the past, in the present, and in the future. I also linked a podcast that you can listen to that he goes into those different spark types and the shadow spark types in detail. So you can kind of fast forward to where it talks about your specific part, or you can listen to the whole thing. I think it's interesting listening to the whole thing because you'll start to identify people in your life who fit different categories. Like one's advocate, one is a nurturer. So you can kind of pick like, oh, this person definitely fits this profile. I used to do it with my kids and then think about, or my students, and think about how I can interact with them knowing that information. And then the last piece, and this is where the connection piece came in. I recognize the barriers to connection this week, but I do think it's so important for us not to lose sight of our community and the people who are around us. So for us, I was like, we have this amazing online community with this class. So how can we tap into that? And what I'm going to ask you to do is, I know this week you're tasked with finding different online learning tools to use with your own students. I'm even like tapping into them with my own kiddos. I created a schedule for them that we're going to be doing some learning goals and just to create some inner calm, right? So outer chaos, inner calm in our own household. So it's kind of business as usual. And I found some amazing like apps where you can take virtual field trips. And I was able, a woman who I follow who does kids music, she's going to do a music lesson for kids virtually every day at 1. So I was able to kind of tap into some different types of learning in order to spark creativity and connection with my own kids. And I'm also gathering a list for educators. So I thought, we could create a discussion, and it's an open discussion so everyone can see it, where you're identifying one type of online tool, resource, activity that you're gonna do or implement with either your students or your own kids in the next couple of weeks. And my goal is to get like a bank of different ones and then have that as a support for us where we can kind of tap into those. Like, oh, this person tried this. I'm gonna see what this looks like, and let me kind of work this into what I'm doing. So that's how we're gonna spark connection. So again, I understand that we are kind of in the unknown right now, and that creates this level of chaos. And I think you'll see when I talked about that inner calm, like, let's look at what we can control, because there's a lot that is out of our control right now. And what we can control, the one thing that kind of creates that inner calm for us, is really tapping into some of these stress management tools at a time where it's so necessary. And you'll notice that when you can keep that inner calm, the people around you, so if you're in this scenario of isolation with your family, your children will feel it. They'll be able to kind of embark on that calmness as well. So just really kind of going inward this week and focusing on these tools. And I'm thinking of you. I'm here for you. If there's anything I can do to help support you, please let me know. One last thing, I am planning on catching up on all grading. And when I went into the grade book this week, I noticed that there's a lot of people who haven't turned, not a lot, that's not fair. There's some people who haven't turned things in from previous weeks. So right now I haven't put it in as a 0, but I really need to start putting that in so that the grades are actually accurate. Right now it just has a dash if you haven't turned it in. So my suggestion is to go in, check what you are missing underneath grades, and get everything to me by the end of this week, or else it'll result in a 0, just because I have to get that grade book up to date. So take care, be calm, and I will see you next week.